students have really taken on a really deep dive into these teachings and have had some really powerful shifts, which as all facilitators is what we want to have first. We need that first before we can then learn to hold space for others. And so that's why we are continuing on with both options of online and face-to-face. We actually start the meditation training in August while still in lockdown, and then hopefully by September, October, November we'll continue, but we will have both an online component as well, because we've actually found that people have been finding these teachings all over Australia, and also we've had students who are in Doha and Bali and Germany and London and Italy, and it's been really amazing to see that when the teachings are ready to expand greater than our geographical area, that the students find the space. And so in a way, it wasn't necessarily the conscious intention of me creating this training, but I just had this really profound deep sense of purpose that actually providing a meditation and mindfulness teacher training is something that I felt was very much part of my dharma, because I found meditation first when I was 15, in fact probably earlier, because even at the Catholic convent we would practice meditations together, and hymn and all those other things. We just didn't really know that that's what the meditation was. And now, as I'm learning from other teachers that are still with us, but also other teachers, I was always one of the daydreamers looking out of my window at school. And I loved that Alan Watts said that those of us that look out the window, we're not daydreaming, we've actually got it right. And I realize now, even from like being 4, 5, 6, just observing the movement of wind in a tree, I was meditating, and we've all been doing that. We just haven't really had a name for it. And so my first practices really at 15 years of age were meditations where I used to absolutely petrify myself with my candles on, and I'd have to have my back to the wall because I thought, oh God, this is a bit of a profound experience. So I guess for me, my spiritual path really evolved from meditation into philosophy, into chanting, and then asana of yoga really came when I was 22. So the exploration and the powerful shift of these teachings has always been a part of my life. And so although I created the Vinyasa Teacher Training first in 2010, I knew that meditation and mindfulness was needed. And what's been very interesting to watch in these last 3 months, and as we continue into the rest of this year, is that if you're called to explore these practices, live them, chew them, practice them, follow that calling, because I can tell you that people need teachers like you. People need these teachings more than we have ever needed them before. The sages of yoga said thousands of years ago that these rich teachings would come back again, and they would come back again in what's considered to be the Kali Yuga, which is when times are changing and ways are ending and new ways of being are coming forwards. So for me, what I really wanted to create for you in this training is an opportunity to explore the myriad of ways in which we can experience a meditation practice. All rivers ultimately lead towards one giant ocean. And what I have found particularly over the years is 2 things that have been always consistent. One is where I'm taught that this way is the only way, the best way, and this is the way. And then the rebel in me is gone, I don't think so. I think there's probably some others that I'd like to explore, and I don't want to just be taught one way. And also where I've seen students who have said, I've tried to meditate and I can't meditate. And that's because they have thought that meditation is coming out of a busy day, sitting down, cross-legged on the floor, spine long for a full hour, trying not to think. And that, thankfully, that old way of thinking what meditation is shifting and changing, and practices that guide us into a meditative state are here and coming forwards in a way that we can progress into bringing meditation into a daily practice, and mindfulness practices which are really very deeply rooted into the Buddhist teachings, and that have been brought forwards more in the mid-70s by the work of Jon Kabat-Zinn and the work he has done in researching mindfulness techniques for stress release and the meditation-based stress response, and how we can utilize mindfulness within our day-to-day. And so really fundamentally, that's where the basis of these teachings came from. And also the recognition for me in the honoring of lineage, and that I'm only teaching you what I have been taught. I'm only teaching you what I have experienced. I'm not reinventing the wheel. These teachings have been around for hundreds of years, some of them thousands of years, and so have these practices, and they still have just as much relevance, if not more so, today. A lot of the teachings that were practiced in meditation were really to encourage us to leave our daily lives, to move into a sort of a transcendental type of existence. But then we are also here as human beings to learn to live this life. And our meditation is not there for us to escape from life. It's there to help us fully embody and navigate all the myriad of teachings that we have by the human experience. And I love that when Ram Dass speaks of in his film Becoming Nobody, that he sits for 3-4 times a day, every day, 9 months, meditating and going to his teacher and saying, please, can you give me more practices? What more can I do? How can I become awakened? And he said, well, have you thought about trying to be human? And he hadn't. And so these teachings are not here to take us away from life, but as life rafts to guide us through our human experience through the spiritual lens. And so the techniques that we incorporate are fundamentally underpinned by your own daily vichara sadhana, which means your own daily practice. And until we can establish our own personal sacred relationship with our daily practice, it makes it really challenging for us to hold space for other people and to guide them through what that feels like by being consistent and what the fruits of the practice are. And so a lot of the practices you explore, all of the techniques that you are given, you explore through your own personal experience, because theory doesn't teach you anything. Practice teaches you everything. Theory can move through what's called the Manamaya kosha, the sheath of being that is constructive of the mental constructs of being, but ultimately our practice has to be a felt sense experience. So we have to move through these experiences ourselves and be able to identify in our potential students, even though you don't know them yet, what's going to resonate and work best with them. So we recognize fundamentally that our teachings and techniques are not a one-size-fits-all approach. So what I have wanted to do is to be able to teach as many different techniques and practices as I can, so that students can then choose which ones are most appropriate and aligned with what they need at that time. And so holding space is also a key part to this. Learning to be able to hold space for private sessions, group sessions, etc., is also a fundamental way in which you can continue to share your offerings in alignment with who you are. So we incorporate techniques of mindfulness, all of the different mindfulness practices that are currently available, guided visualizations, the theory and the practice of multiple styles of meditation, open-eyed meditation, walking meditation, sound meditation, mantra repetition meditation, all the different styles that are available. Yoga Nidra, which of course is a really profound, scientifically studied practice where they've recognized that 20 minutes of Yoga Nidra practice between 2 and 4 p.m. Creates the same cellular reaction and biochemical in the body as 2 hours of deep rest and deep sleep. So it's almost like the yogis' version of a nana nap. They were very clever back in the day. Practices as well of prarthana, being prayer, pratyahara, withdrawing the senses, how we set a sankalpa, creating affirmations, the power of devotional practices, what props you use, how to use malas, sound healing, sound therapy, whether that be through crystal bowls, the Tibetan bowls, through working with the solfeggio frequency, all the different waves that impact us neurologically that subsequently impact our whole biochemistry. And also moving into very specialist areas, such as working with students who are moving through post-traumatic stress disorder, trauma, pain management, and also working with meditation techniques for children, which of course require a whole different approach altogether. And also fundamentally what we recognize is that we share these techniques. However, we need to have a really firm understanding of the whole neuroscience behind meditation and mindfulness, why we are shifting biochemically, why we are shifting physiologically, why anatomically, psychologically, spiritually are we shifting as a result of these practices. What's happening in the brain, what's happening to our neuroendocrine system, what's happening in our immune systems, and all the systemic physiology that is interacting and responding to all of our practices. And of course, understanding the physiology of this also gives us a really firm foundation in understanding the stress response, the response biochemically of clinical depression, which can also be very present in your students who are moving through chronic pain for a very long period of time. And when you think about the statistics in 2008 of the World Health Organization, who recognized that by 2020, 1 in 3 would be diagnosed with clinical depression, and by 2030, depression and anxiety states would be the biggest financial disease burden on the West. And we already reached that stat about 3 years ago. So our whole culture is changing. And as I mentioned at the beginning, these practices are not here in order for us to escape our experience. Our practices are here in order for us to fully embody and fully experience every interaction as a teaching and as an offering of growth. And originally we had 5 hours of meditation techniques in our Vinyasa yoga teacher training. And of course, Meditation Australia recognized that really it does need to be a standalone training, which is why we created this 110-hour training that's accredited by them, because we want to really change the way that meditation facilitators are seen, and that the education and science that is underpinning our work is really crucial. So we also go through the research studies that are fundamental to supporting what these practices actually do. And these are really important when you're going into environments where research is needed. I gave a talk for the Victoria Police service last year, and so even before talking about the practices of meditation and mindfulness and yoga, the first 15 minutes were actually shared on the statistics and the research of the ways in which meditation and mindfulness techniques have been used in the military for the last 15-20 years and are now being brought forwards into the emergency services. So 20 years ago, if you spoke about meditation, it would often be referred to as being quite fluffy, very esoteric, and it has that connotation, but it is a spiritual experience that fundamentally is also deeply embedded in science, of which meditation and yoga is deeply rooted into. So meditation research studies is really important, and it also has to be research that's been conducted over a significant period of time, and also by really high quality researchers. Otherwise, there's really no point in sharing what this material is. And of course, your own practice is fundamentally so crucial to your learning and progression. So all of the submissions of work that you do is all practice based. And so you have 4 major assignments that are submitted throughout the 4-month course. And so it's a 60-hour face-to-face training. The 50 hours is on the home study. The first assignment 1, is for you to attend 5 meditation classes and observe and write up your observations on the delivery of the meditations that you were taught. Your second assignment is to actually start writing up 5 individual class plans. The third is to write a 5-week consecutive course, because a lot of students often don't want to go in blind just to weekly classes. They actually want to be taught, and they want to be part of a group that is consistent week after week. And so your 4th and your final assignment is actually to deliver assignment 3 or 4 to a group of individuals, and then you write up your reflections and contemplations on the delivery of what you have provided, what you would do differently, what you think you did really well, how you felt you communicated the techniques, whether or not you felt that the techniques were successful, whether or not you had students who were really challenged by them or dropped in really easily to the practices, or somebody who was really emotional within them. We want you to be able to know how to manage those, how to support those whilst you are being trained, so that you can be mentored through that process. So really, that's where we fundamentally wanted to bring in your major learning to reinforce what you're already being taught week to week. So your practice and your dedication to your practice is really important, and a really important part of your training. So all of the units, of course, are going to be delivered both face-to-face and online. It'll be online only for module 1, which will be on the 8th and 9th of August, which is the first weekend, because that falls into the lockdown period, and it will be on Zoom. And then obviously, if we're permitted to reopen for September, which will be the weekend of the 12th and 13th, that will also run at Moksha, but it will also be run online as well for people who are choosing for health reasons to stay working online, or are not living geographically in a space where you're able to participate face to face. So it's really going to be a choice. And because I've delivered this whole training online thus far, I know that you receive exactly the same experience as you would face to face.